The episode begins with Counselor Anubis sitting in his office, deep in thought about Seth's words. Seth had told him that the king was not a monster like them, and he still lacked concrete evidence. Therefore, he wanted Anubis to help him find the truth. Anubis had been feeling for some time that the king was hiding a great secret from them, but he couldn't trust Seth's words more than the king's. Nevertheless, he wanted to know the truth about the king. Then we see Sari and Asia together, and Osloth enters, surprised to find Asia with Sari. He hadn't seen her in a long time, and she hadn't grown taller, remaining as short as she was. Asia had believed that Osloth had left abruptly because of her, but he reassured her that he came to this place of his own accord because he felt he needed to become stronger. He always intended to return for her someday, and when he saw Sari and told her about Asia, Sari was eager to meet her. Osloth thought of bringing Asia here because he knew she would never suspect Sari, so he asked Sari to make that happen. He then informed Asia that he had become stronger, training in combat and horseback riding, and had improved himself to protect her. He asked her how he looked to her, and she told him she saw him just as she used to. Then she asked what he wanted her to do, and he asked her to write a letter to the king. After Asia finished writing the letter, Osloth took it to the king. He told Sari that she would meet the king when he agreed to her request. Then he left them alone in the room. Asia expressed her anxiety about meeting the king, as she was about to face the detestable king who had made her a sacrifice to the king of monsters. Sari reassured her, saying she held no grudge against him and that if she were in Asia's place, she would seek revenge, even if it meant her execution. She encouraged Asia to go there and speak her mind proudly. Asia thanked Sari for her enthusiasm, and then she went with Osloth. She thought to herself that she didn't remember much about the days between the night she learned she was a sacrifice and the moment she accepted it, but it scared her. She had surrendered herself to fate, and now she was about to face the king head-on. Afterward, Sari entered the king's presence, and he recognized her as the envoy of Ozmargo, the sacrifice who had been exempted. He confirmed her identity by examining her document bearing the royal seal of Ozmargo. The content of the document was of great importance, as it was unusual for a kingdom like Ozmargo to send such a message. The king decided to convene an international council in 7 days to consult with representatives of other nations. He then asked Sari to convey to her king that he would grant a ceasefire to allow for this consultation. Sari agreed, and the king asked her one more question: what was the world of monsters like? Since they had accepted sacrifices for peace, they needed to know more about it. Sari explained that the world of monsters was more ordinary than humans believed. They had their ups and downs, worries, and moments of joy. Some were kind, while others were not. The world was governed by a benevolent king who wished for peace between monsters and humans. It was not the exotic place people imagined. After finishing her explanation, Sari noticed that the king was looking at her attentively. As she left the king's presence, Sari asked Osloth if saying something disrespectful to the king would be a problem. Osloth mentioned that he was surprised by her candor, but what surprised him even more was the king's consideration of her words. The king, who had thought so carefully about the sacrifices, was stern in public but seemed different in private. Sari realized that the human king was somewhat similar to the king of monsters. Afterward, we switch to the world of monsters, where Counselor Anubis is remembering Seth's request to convey something to the king without implicating himself. Anubis is hesitant and unsure, as he is confident in the king's integrity. Nevertheless, he knocks on the king's door to seek permission to enter, and the king allows him in, asking if the matter is urgent. From his place, Anubis would tell the king that he only needed a moment and preferred to see him in person. However, he recalled Seth's words, where the king had vehemently refused his request and stayed secluded in his chamber. There might be a reason for the king's secrecy, so Anubis implored the king to meet him. The king finally opened the door and asked Anubis what was the matter, as he was very busy. Anubis then began presenting his proposals regarding the future course of action. First, he discussed negotiations with Uena, and second, he addressed Lady Sari. The scene shifts to Sari, Asia, and Osloth, with Sari informing them that she would return now and thanking them for the daily diary. Osloth expressed his willingness to wait here until the council reached a decision. However, Asia intervened, stating that he had his own life to worry about. Sari excitedly looked forward to returning, saying she couldn't wait, and then she asked Asia if she could ask her something. Despite the promise of not getting angry, Asia warned her that she might still become upset. Nevertheless, Sari wanted to hear it, and she asked Asia why she had chosen to study the language of monsters despite all the suffering she had endured because of them. Asia explained that she had studied it just to confirm her identity, but now she didn't care anymore, regardless of who she was. Sari bid them farewell with the sacred bird and said goodbye to Asia and Osloth. Next, we see Sari flying with the sacred bird and imagining talking to King Leo. She told him she wanted him to feel the same feeling someday, as he always seemed somewhat tense and lonely. She felt that this could work, as the bigger picture of history was essential, but this was important too. If she could decipher the code in the daily diary, she might discover the unknown origin of King Leo or something related to him. The sacred bird told her they were almost there. The scene then transitions to the palace, where they receive a message from the border guards that Sari has returned from Uena. The king stands on the balcony to welcome Sari, who falls from the sacred bird into his arms. She apologizes for the delay, but the king reassures her, and then the minister, Anubis, welcomes Sari and informs her that the royal council will convene immediately. Sari mentions she wants to go to her room first, but Anubis insists she attends the council first. We then see Sari and the king in the council chamber with other councillors, where they will consider the opinions of all nations in an international council. They will maintain their official response until the end. Sari thinks to herself that she's eager to tell King Leo so much, but she hasn't read the daily diary yet, so she should wait for confirmed information. She also notices that King Leo appears different in some way. Counselor Anubis explains that these negotiations are about abolishing sacrifices and normalizing relations with Uena, in addition to the role of the Queen's representative, which will be officially announced in the near future. The king agrees to this in principle, and Anubis points out that if they continue negotiations with Uena, it will eventually become public knowledge. Princess Amiet remarks that Sari has worked hard all this time, and Anubis, being stern as usual, doubts that this person would accept Sari in his heart. Princess Amiet hopes that Sari is recognized for her achievements. Finally, Anant, one of Sari's attendants, speaks up, saying that what Anubis is proposing is impossible, and he has a strange feeling about the palace lately. On the other hand, Anubis tells the king that all the monsters dispatched throughout Ozmargo have returned to the palace this morning. Nearly the entire kingdom should now be aware of tomorrow's announcement. However, the exact timing of the council meeting has not been set yet, but Anubis recommends holding it shortly after the announcement. Suddenly, Sari interrupts the conversation and asks the king to take her somewhere immediately because she's feeling extremely bored and wants to go out now. Anubis advises her not to distract the king from his preparations for tomorrow. The king agrees with Sari's request to go out and tells Anubis that he's done everything he can, leaving the rest to him. Anubis is astonished by her audacity. Afterward, the king takes Sari and flies with her on his royal bird. Sari apologizes for her selfishness, and the king assures her that it doesn't matter. In fact, it was clever of her to take him away without others guessing her true intentions. Sari then notices that something is troubling the king, as he hasn't shown this side of himself in a while. They land near a tree, and the king tells Sari that in this particular spot, the minerals in the cave below react to magic, but it requires a certain level of power to produce a visible response like this. It used to be a sign of strength among the monsters. Sari is amazed by the glowing cave, with the entire ceiling and walls covered in sparkling minerals. She tells the king that she considered this light to be mere magic, but it appears differently in this land, where the stars don't shine except on nights of inspiration. She couldn't see it even during her single visit to Uena because she was preoccupied with hiding. The king reflects that when they reconcile with Uena and when he can appear publicly in any form, he will take her to see the real starry sky. Sari reassures the king, saying she's sure people will understand his feelings. The king then expresses his determination to move forward for the sake of both of them and his own interests, as he can't retreat no matter what. Sari is confident that they will understand his emotions. They embrace each other, and Sari assures the king that everything will be alright and that she will always be with him. However, Sari notices something bothering the king because he hasn't looked this way for a while. Meanwhile, we shift to the royal palace, where a large crowd of people is waiting for the king to appear and make the announcement. The head of the royal guards addresses the crowd, expressing the need for caution despite the fact that the king's presence shouldn't be limited to the people. On the other hand, Anubis recalls Seth's words about disappearing for a short while during the event but assures him that he has no plans against the king. Anubis then reminds the king that it's time for him to go. Suddenly, the king remembers Sari's promise that he will be alright and that people will always be with him. Then, the king appears before the large gathering of people. He addresses them, talking about the kingdom's new future, cooperation with their neighboring nation Uena, and the need for true peace rather than just a temporary ceasefire. He mentions the envoy sent to Uena to pave the way for negotiations. The monsters are surprised by this announcement, and rumors about the existence of a human queen are spreading, causing concern among the creatures. However, during his speech, Judge Seth performs a specific enchantment, causing the king to collapse completely. He tries to continue speaking but is interrupted as the sky changes its color to resemble a human sky. All the monsters are shocked by this development. Seth informs them that the poisonous atmosphere has suddenly disappeared, and the king has turned into a human. Anubis recalls Seth's words about knowing the true nature of the absolute king to whom he pledged everything. The situation becomes uncertain as the king's transformation is witnessed by all. What will happen next, and will the public accept this change? This is what we will find out in the next episode. Please stay tuned and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell to receive all the latest updates.